Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for staying around and listening to this talk. And it's great to see you've got an interest in apprenticeships. I have a huge interest in apprenticeships as well. My name's Sascha Benson-Cooper. I'm from Accipio. So just a bit of background about us. We are a premium Moodle partner. We've got offices in New Zealand and also the UK, and we have apprenticeship expertise through our sister company. So we own a training company that does management apprenticeships effectively, and we've spent a lot of time developing software to basically make Moodle better to deliver stuff that the training company can then use. And obviously apprenticeships has been a really hot focus for us as well. This is all part of our Accipio One suite, which extends Moodle. It includes a native shop for Moodle. It includes a grading plugin, which we gave a talk with London School of Economics and London University on yesterday. And the one I want to talk to you about today is the apprenticeship stack itself. We are trusted by some fairly big names, from PepsiCo in the Premier League all the way through to major government departments as well. So enough about us. Let's just talk about apprenticeships and the wider challenge. For those of you delivering apprenticeships, you'll understand that there's some pretty high stakes here. You know, if you get this wrong, our good friends Ofsted will come and take something away from you. If you get it wrong, DfE will come and claw back some of your funding as well. So, you know, it's really, really critical that all the compliance is there. And I'm afraid to say that Moodle is not enough. Moodle does brilliantly in terms of learning management, but when it comes to some of those special compliance things, and we just saw a presentation on CPD and off the job, you know, some of these things are really critical to get right within apprenticeships. So what a lot of providers end up doing is they tend to have Moodle for their learning delivery, and then they have a separate system called OneFile or Aptim or whatever to do the actual apprenticeship parts. And that means you're juggling between two systems, you've got to talk to each other, the learner doesn't get a fantastic experience, and that's a bit of a concern as well. And you end up with these workarounds and you basically waste a lot of time. So what if Moodle could do it all? And that's basically what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about that challenge, we're going to talk a bit about what those gaps are in Moodle, and then we're going to give you a bit of a blueprint in terms of kind of what we think could work as well. So just going a little bit deeper in terms of why Moodle can't do the whole thing. This is the delivery framework that we use for some of our apprenticeships, and it's fairly standard, and hopefully you can see that at the back, but you normally have a first phase of some kind of onboarding. You then do the core delivery, which would then be your online learning, your face-to-face sessions, some kind of one-to-one with a coach, and that will get repeated throughout the program before you get to the end, and you'll have what we call gateway and getting ready for the EPA before you actually get the recognition, which might be a CMI certificate in our case, or whatever recognition that you provide. Now, the first problem with Moodle is this selection bit. So it's really critical to get all the data from the learner right, so you can get that into the government systems for ILR returns. But you also need to get it into something called a training agreement, an apprenticeship agreement, and that needs to be signed by 3 parties. Once again, lots of manual workarounds if you're just using a Moodle feedback form, for example, or profile fields for that matter. There's also a requirement to do a skills scan on a learner. So, you know, where does the learner sit against the apprenticeship standard? What are the gaps? What do we need to recognise as prior learning and therefore reduce funding? Once again, not provided within Moodle. We then also need to capture the interaction between the learner and their coach to complete the onboarding process, and we call that a visit, and that visit then needs to be approved. Once again, Moodle does not have functionality to record the one-to-one session between those two people. Moodle is also kind of more designed in a linear way, whereby you might do a course, and at the end of the course you might do an assignment. Apprenticeships don't work like that. Apprenticeships are more holistically assessed, whereby you might have a professional discussion, and that might mark off a number of assessment criteria across the standard, and that evidence needs to be recorded somewhere meaningfully, which doesn't naturally fit in, you know, any which one course that you might be putting through. So we need to think about this holistic assessment concept as well. And there's a really big requirement to have a formal progress review with an apprentice every 12 weeks. And if you do not do that, DfE will take your money away. So once again, critical that you've got oversight of that, but also that the things that the apprentice and their coach are filling out in that form need to be iron tight, because Ofsted's going to look at that as well, and that's going to be what's basically measuring the impact. Once again, no functionality in Moodle to do that. We just heard a bit of a talk about a CPD log or an off-the-job log. Once again, nothing out of core that does that, and it's really important that that is logged every month. And it's also important to show visualization of the progress towards the total hours that they need to get throughout the apprenticeship. But we also need to show where they are relative to where they should be. And I think that's the really difficult part as well, because it means you need a start and an end date for a qualification, which once again is not in Moodle. And we need to visualize all of this progress for both the learner. We need to visualize it for their coach so they can see all their learners and who's at risk. And we also need to be able to visualize it for centre managers and even employers. So an employer can log in and see this is where my learners are at within Moodle natively. And by doing this, you'll drive up your qualification achievement rate. And we've been able to get our qualification achievement rate above 90%, which is fairly exceptional, given that the average is about 50%. So some really, really brilliant stuff that can be done there. And then getting ready for EPA, some kind of gap analysis that shows you all the evidence, which evidence is marked off which assessment criteria, and then having an easy export of your showcase portfolio. Once again, that sits within Moodle, which can then be just handed across to the EPAO so that you don't have to go and do all this manual work around to get stuff. So hopefully that paints a fairly clear picture in terms of kind of where there's some gaps in Moodle. And if you just use Moodle Core, I'm afraid to say you're going to have spreadsheets. You are going to have all kinds of headaches if you get audited by Ofsted or DfE, and the visibility will be absent, so that's going to pull down your qualification achievement rates. And don't get me started in terms of data silos and errors and stuff like that. And then EPA, once again, getting ready for EPA, it's going to be a bit chaotic for individual learners. So organisations tend to have two systems for that very reason, but we thought actually why not build something natively within Moodle, because that's what most training providers actually already have, so why not make it do more so it does the end-to-end process. So let me just show you some of the parts of that puzzle. So what you can see here is basically a dashboard, and in the Moodle world this is just a block that sits on your dashboard, so nothing too complicated there. But what it's showing me is a number of things. So it's showing me a list of all my learners. It's allowing me to go deeper, so I can go and view the off-the-job log or the CPD log for that individual learner. I can go down and look at their visit reports. I can also have a snapshot of all their evidence, their gap analysis. I can even look at what they can see in terms of their learning plan, and we'll get to that in a second. Next, you can see who their coach is, and you can, so there's an allocation method that we can do to basically assign which coach goes to which apprentice, and that's in our qualifications framework. You can see there's a start and an end date for that apprentice. Once again, that is starting to drive all the metrics around where they should be relative to where they are. And you can see your status. So as you might know, you've got an on-program status, you've got a break in learning status, you've got a leaver status, etc. that we need, and a past planned end date status that we need to really monitor and be aware of as well. And then you've got various RAG reporting pieces. So we can see just in here, you've got your core progress, so that's your core progress through the qualification, so the actual standard itself, how many of the assessment criteria in the standard have you actually marked off, and you can see a little black line there which actually shows you where you should be. So this learner here is in front of progress, whereas some of these others are behind, and there's a RAG that comes alongside of that. You can see the same thing here for their off-the-job progress. So I can see who's in front in terms of getting closer to their target for off the job. And finally, I can also see these two columns on the far right-hand side, which are really important. One is to make sure that a learner has entered off the job every month, which is a compliance requirement. And there's another column here, which is about actually have they had their formal progress review within the last 12 weeks. And if they haven't, it goes red. If it's close, it goes amber, and these learners are green. And then all that gets wrapped up into these dashboard tiles across the top, so I can see that luckily I've got 0% non-compliance in terms of formal progress review, but I've got a few ambers that I need to watch out for. I can see the same snapshot of my off-the-job progress, so I can report to my board and say 80% of my learners are making good or better progress when it comes to off-the-job, which is a really, really key requirement. And then I can do the same thing there in terms of the core progress through the qualification. And then finally, this one here shows me the aggregate of it all. So I can give one number to people to say, this is how we are tracking. And once again, there's a lovely little filter at the top here that allows me to drill down on anything that I want to in terms of rag statuses, in terms of what employer they might come from, in terms of the coach, et cetera, even, which month are they going to finish their qualification in. Now, that view is then repeated for the different types of people that might want to view that dashboard. So if I am a centre manager coming in, I can see everyone. If I'm my coach, I just see my learners. If I'm an employer, I see the exact same thing, but just for my learners. So it means that when we are having our one-to-ones with employers to check progress on apprenticeships, they know already where someone's at, and it's real time. No additional reporting required from us, which saves us quite a lot of time in terms of preparing for those meetings. And I think overall this really does reduce the risk of callback. So this is what an apprentice sees, and they can see, once again, their overall core progress. They can see their own RAG rating. So this learner is red because they are behind when it comes to the progress relative to that black bar, which is expected progress. And then they can also see something similar here for their CPD or off-the-job log as well. So this learner has to get 350 hours, and they are currently 36% of the way through, and they're pretty much on track to where they need to be. It is also showing me my onboarding section and any other things that we want to build. This is a purely modular dashboard block, and we build out this through a qualification framework, so it's hugely personalizable. You can have anything in here you want, basically. But what's really key is these progress bars. So this shows if you've completed this thing, and that thing is made up of a number of what we call assessment criteria, but you can call it anything. Just think criteria, or even competencies is absolutely fine, or KSBs, regardless of what you want to use. But you can see this KSB has been marked as being complete. If it's an assignment, for example, and they've submitted some work and it hasn't been graded, that would be blue, because it's in grading. If it's been returned to the learner, it would be amber. So really, really quickly, learners can see exactly what they need to do. And we've had to build outside of the Moodle competency framework, and we've had to build outside of the outcomes framework as well in courses to give us real flexibility on this, because we also want this to work on both Moodle and also on Totra as well. And once again, I think that just means that learners can focus on the stuff that they need to focus on when they need to focus on it. There's also that onboarding piece that I spoke about. So how do you get all the information from the student to then get into the ILR, but also get that into the apprenticeship agreement itself and all the other training plans and stuff like that that goes alongside. So we've built something that allows us to basically do a registration form that will then push data into two places. One is into their profile field. Another one is into this thing we called a ILP, or an individual learning plan. And the cool thing about the individual learning plan is that it means that a coach can go through and they can just add the little bits of information that only the coach knows, and then they can press an export button, and that produces a beautiful glossy PDF all ready for signing. So there's no one going in there and copy and pasting stuff between Word documents, which can happen in some providers. And this has lots of different uses, by the way. The Premier League, for example, they just use this on its own for their qualifications rather than having to rely on the full apprenticeship stack itself. The next thing I want to talk about is the skills scan part of the onboarding process. So we've built something called Accipio Diagnose, and this is one of the outputs. And what it allows you to do is a full 360 or just a self-assessment. So a learner will go in and answer a series of questions against the apprenticeship standard. That will then show them their own self-assessment score, which you can see here. If you want, it can also show you the benchmark, so where they are relative to other learners on the program. And you can also pull in a 360 score, so get their peers or whatever it might be to give them feedback. And as a result, when you're having that one-to-one between an apprentice and a coach, you can really start to drill down on those areas that might be of concern relative to some of those benchmarks. But what we can also do is we can pull off things like their highest and lowest scoring areas, but we can show hidden strengths and blind spots. So hidden strengths are obviously something that they think they're not very good at, but other people think they are good at, and blind spots are the opposite of that, whereby I think I'm fantastic at something, but actually nobody else does, and therefore I need to know about that as well. And then all that can be downloaded into a glossy report that can then be put on their file as well. So This is obviously really important for recognising prior learning and making funding adjustments as well. What is also great about it is it allows a coach to moderate it with the learner. So what the learner says is not gospel. There's an interface that basically allows someone to go in and say, you rated yourself 5 on this, but you're actually a 3. Let's agree it now, and you can agree it and moderate it, and then that's the starting point. You're not recognising prior learning for, say, a overconfident student. But what's really cool about it is you can then also get it to be done a number of times. So you might do the skill scan at the start of the program, you then might do it at a couple of points throughout the program, and then at the end. So if Ofsted come and see you, you can quite clearly demonstrate our learner started down here, and now they are up here, and that's the impact that our program is having. So some really, really powerful evidence there that you can build out. One of the things that I alluded to earlier was this concept of visits that was really lacking in Moodle. Each visit has a different type, and you build out a type of visits on a form, and you can specify what you want in that type of visit. So this example here is a formal progress review, and you can see here I've added a whole raft of things that I want the coach and the student to fill out. I can determine what's visible to the student, what's required, and I can even add a box in here to allow holistic assessment, so the coach could actually mark off any assessment criteria across the whole standard right in the visit interface. Just moving up the form, you can also see that I can say if I want to allow the coach and the student to add CPD time or off-the-job time through the visit process, and I can also enable one-to-one or group visits. So a group visit would be taking attendance, so that's basically the coach putting in your stuff for you, or it's the learner doing it more manually one-to-one. And then you can also see there's a whole process here for approvals, which is really, really key. It's not just a learner putting in an entry. It's not just a coach putting an entry. It actually has automatically tokens that get emailed out to the right people to say, is this correct? Can you add your comments? So a manager can go and engage. And then you can audit it, and you can tell Ofsted that actually I've got a number of managers engaged in the process. They'll be happy. You'll get good marks. It also does all the 12-week FPR stuff as well. So the next one is the CPD tool that we've built, or the off-the-job log. And what you can see here is you've got the total hours going against 350. You've then got where they should be, and you can then see their log here. It's all using inline editable, so it's super easy and super quick to edit. Just go down the page and press enter and it's done. But you can also see there's a number of automated entries here. And it's automated because what we've done is we've then said an activity on a course page is allowed to have 30 minutes of CPD or off-the-job time, and if they complete that, it's automatically going into this log, which can then be edited as well. So, for example, you could have an assignment, which you might say is an hour, you might have a quiz, which might be 30 minutes, you might have an e-learning module, which might be 20 minutes, and all this gets fed in automatically. But once again, if you want to add it manually, you just click on the Add Record button, and you can do that, and coaches have visibility of this as well as centre managers and even employers. And there's a nice, easy export functionality for this as well. So it cuts down on admin, and it's really important if you get audited by ESFA, you say there's 300 hours that this learner has done, and you can really clearly show exactly when those happened and what they were, and once again, all configurable as well. To make all this possible, we've had to build a qualifications framework, and bizarrely Moodle doesn't really have a qualifications framework in it, and by qualifications I mean that it's not just a cluster of courses. Actually, these are all the assessment criteria that you need to do, mapped to these modules, mapped to this qualification, and then a learner can be assigned more than one qualification and have visualization through that process as well. But this is basically where we build out that process, that page you saw on the student dashboard. And it's where we put the assessment criteria, but it's also where we say this is how long we expect a module to take. And it's also where we can allocate the relationship between a learner and their coach. So this learner has been tagged with this coach, and we can also allocate how many hours of off-the-job time they need to get for the qualification that they're doing. And bearing in mind, they can do more than one qualification. So if it's a functional skills qualification, you'd have a second qualification assigned to you and that coach. And then you can also set the status in here as well. We've spoken a bit about holistic assessment already, so I won't go too much into that, but just know that assessment criteria can be marked off automatically by completing an activity. So that could be by completing a quiz again, that could be by doing an assignment or even an e-learning piece of module, or it can be done in a module, or assessment criteria can be marked off manually through the grading process on an assignment as well, which is quite a common user case as well. And like I said before, all colour-coded, if it's returned, that assessment criteria would go back as orange. This is the gap analysis page, which basically shows me the whole apprenticeship standard, everything that's been complete, but what's really cool is it then also sucks out of the platform any evidence that relates to the completion of that assessment criteria. So if I was to click on this evidence link here, it would take me directly to that piece of evidence. So once again, really, really handy when it comes to auditing and things like that. And then there's also a export for your EPA functionality as well, and you can tag any piece of evidence in the system to say, I want this to be part of my showcase. We've also built a really comprehensive quality assurance plugin for Moodle as well, which we did a talk on yesterday with the London School of Economics and Arden University. This basically manages the whole bit between someone submitting an assignment and getting a grade, to making sure that you're getting consistent grades, doing all the automated sampling for internal verification, external verification, and things like triple blind marking, which is not natively within Moodle, along with the whole raft of plagiarism checks. And it gives you the full audit log of what happened to any piece of evidence, so that you can do your internal quality assurance functions without having any challenges there. And it even includes things like, SLAs for markers, so they can say, I need to return work to a learner within 2 weeks, and it will also automatically assign it to the right internal verifier, for example, for those secondary checks. So just wrapping up, I think hopefully you can see that Moodle alone doesn't do enough, and we've done quite a lot of work in the space to extend it to do some of these things, from onboarding compliance to skill scans to off the job to visit tracking to rate dashboards, gap analysis, and also the IQA workflows for assessment as well. And the next bit in the journey for us is to release what we call an AI coach. So if you're familiar with apprenticeships, you probably know there's a lot of work that an apprentice and a coach have to do together. A lot of that's manual chasing work, getting them ready. AI does a much better job at doing that, and we did a talk yesterday on how we can actually use an agent to do much of this work, and we've got a prototype in the works already. And then we're also releasing an AI assessor, so some of that manual assessment stuff doesn't have to happen by a person, or at least some of the IQA bits doesn't have to happen by a person as well. So that's really exciting as well. So if you are interested in being part of that wider roadmap, please have a chat. Really happy to involve other people, because if we can make this better, it's brilliant. And we are planning to release the CPD part of this to the open source community as well. But we do need to put much more investment into expanding this product set before it's ready to be released further. Any questions?
Yeah, hello. I'm working with a very big cohort of more than 30,000 teachers across the UK who are kind of doing an apprenticeship, but then also their mentors are doing an apprenticeship. So we have an apprenticeship on coach kind of solution that we have built in Moodle ourselves. How configurable is your system? Could that be done so that we have a learner who is also a coach that is also being coached by someone else? I don't know if you understand the hierarchy there.
Absolutely. This is all built around Moodle permissions. And all you'll be doing is allocating the, in the first case, the apprentice and the mentor, and then you'll be allocating the other apprentice and mentor, and they would then have the right permissions only to see their learners, and they would be able to do those things and nothing else. And we can lock those permissions down even further. It's quite granular.
That's great. Thank you.
We also built an extension to this for the Premier League, which allows the whole mentor matching process to happen as well, so that could be relevant.
Don't need that. Hi, Sascha, how are you doing? Yeah, I heard what you said there, and having been on the receiving end of and currently on the receiving end of an apprenticeship, and completely flick-flacking from different LMSs to different one files or buds or whatever it is annoying. So the progress that you've done here looks awesome, to be fair. The question that I have is, you showed it from the apprentice's end, and we saw that dashboard. Is there anything else recognisable in the LMS where perhaps is there any way that you specifically make the course that you might want to assign them to? Is there anything in there that they know that they're on an apprenticeship, or could that be multi-used in other areas outside of an apprenticeship? That's quite a badly constructed question. I know what I'm trying to say.
It's hugely flexible, but what you're doing in that qualification builder is you are mapping out the things that you want them to do, and you can map that to a course, you can map it to an activity within a course, and then you're building out assessment criteria below that, and that's just a block that goes on a dashboard in terms of visualization. So if you want them to see other blocks, they can see their current learning block in Moodle, for example, so they know exactly what they need to do. They can still see their Moodle workplace certifications, etc., etc. So yeah, really, really flexible, and if I'm doing an apprenticeship, it's just one small part of my wider learner journey on an LMS.
Sure. I mean, that was where my next question was going. Is it siloed? Do they get, could they see inside their dashboard, for instance?
Absolutely.
Is it completely different?
The dashboard that you saw is the exact same dashboard they would normally see. It's just a block that would put on the dashboard, and we can make that block visible to only people who have been enrolled in a qualification, and that could be an apprenticeship qualification or it could be a non-apprenticeship qualification, because I think you can see that this works for non-apprenticeships as well. And
sure.
we use it to deliver our CMI qualifications.
Okay, thank you. Cheers.
And we have time for... He was just asking to make me run.
Hi there, Ross Ward here. You mentioned that you moved away from the competency frameworks that are built into Moodle, so I'm just interested in what the limitations were on the core one, and is that what led to the qualifications builder framework?
Yeah. Look, speaking frankly, the competency framework is not well used because it's not very good, and it's quite clunky, and it's very hard to flex and bend the way that you need to. And I think you can see here we want to have more of a holistic picture that also draws in outcomes from a course page. But for us personally, we also build so it works on both Totra and Moodle with the same code base, and so that was important for us. But other people might take a different approach, but yeah, that was really important for us.
All right, let's give a big round of applause for Sascha.